Do you want to become a treasure hunter navigating a strange and odd world where you can find relics of strange magic? Well, you can do that in a game called Electric Bastionland, though there is one catch as your entire party is in debt, and the only reason they need to hunt for treasure is to pay that off. Now, that is what this game is all about, Electric Bastionland, which is sort of like a sequel slash expansion of a game called Into the Odd. Now, this game is absolutely wacky and amazing, and just to understand anything about it, I totally recommend listening to this episode where I bring on Emily to talk about it. Now, let's get into it. Hi. So, we are doing another episode of TTRPG and Talk to Me with Emily. We are going to be talking about Electric Bastionland, which is a TTRPG I'm not very familiar with yet. However, it looks like it is very wacky and fun. And
yes.
So to kind of start us off, Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from Paradise Made, paradise.made, on Instagram mostly. I do have a Twitter that I am not very good at using. I do have a TikTok that I am even worse at using. But you can find me out and about and around on the internet. And yeah, is this gonna air after Monster of the Week? I didn't think about asking that earlier.
Yes.
Okay, so you've probably, if you listen to the Monster of the Week episode, you've probably heard me get really loud and cuss a lot, and that's gonna happen again, I'm sure. But I'm really excited to be here and talk about Electric Bastionland because it is so much fun. I'm gonna put out the caveat that I have not played a ton of it, but I am so fond of the system and the art in the book, especially, that I have looked at it multiple times, which as a person who has ADHD and a really hard time reading TTRPG source books, like I learn through like practical play. I don't think I've read any of my like D&D books through to any significant degree. I will like look up what I need to look up and then I'm like, okay, that's enough. And I played Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory for I think 2 years, a year and a half to 2 years is how long our campaign went on before we wrapped it up. And it was dark and gory and beautiful. And that massive rule book made me want to lay down on the floor every time I had to consult it. So the fact that I love the Electric Bastionland rulebook as much as I do, I feel should be highlighted. But with the caveat that I haven't played a ton of it, I do sometimes just make characters for it for fun.
I love that.
It's I feel like probably everybody can relate to that. They're just goofy and it's so easy. So what do you want to talk about first? Should we introduce the like premise of the game first?
Yes, that was actually exactly what I was going to lead into. I've only read the essentially like quick start version of this game. I haven't gotten super deep into it, but I'm very interested. And I am curious, as someone who has read the book and actually played, how would you explain this game to me if I was someone who did not know anything about it?
I would say it is, first of all, wacky sci-fi fantasy. So if you are looking for anything particularly gritty, anything, I don't want to say anything with a lot of substance because I feel like that is up to the conductor and the players a lot of the time. But in terms of very like intense mechanics, you're not going to find that in Electric Bastionland, which is, I determined literally right as you started recording. I was reading a subreddit post, a Reddit post. This is a sequel to the game Into the Odd by the same author, Chris McDowell. So shout out to Chris McDowell. It appears that Into the Odd has a very similar rule set with some like content and thematic differences largely. And I've not played Into the Odd, but Electric Bastionland, I think, is an expansion on Into the Odd, is my understanding anyway.
Sounds about right from what I know.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that Into the Odd was its own thing until Willow told me about it literally 15 minutes ago. And then I've been frantically Googling and losing myself down that rabbit hole.
Learn something new every day.
I love it. I love learning. Yeah, so Electric Bastionland is a sort of post-apocalyptic science fiction fantasy wherein it's very mechanics light. So that gives you a lot of narrative freedom, even more so than Monster of the Week, honestly. The limitlessness of this game can sometimes be overwhelming, but I think the way it's structured, the author, Chris McDowell, does a very good job of sort of designing it in such a way that it takes that open, sort of very expansive array of possibilities that you have, and he really tailors it down and provides you with enough like wacky specifics in your sort of starting the very beginnings of your campaign to really get off the ground running, in a sense that it's like when I played a roof runner. I can't remember exactly the title of her job now. I'll have to see if I can find it in the manual when we start looking a little bit further. But her name's Flair, and she's 4'11", and
Gosh.
she's obsessed with being as high up as possible.
So cool.
And yeah, it was so much fun. And I was the youngest player in the very small group that we were playing with, and so my failed career, which is basically your class, my failed career was roof runner, and in failing my career, I accrued a debt that the rest of the party shares, and so that's sort of the core premise. That's what really ties you together. So that then, I mean, it does the job of the, oh, you meet in a tavern. Like, no, you are bound together by the fact that you all collectively owe 10,000 new pound is the currency to whatever entity it is that's like linked or listed on the youngest player's failed career sheet. So the core conceit of Electric Bastionland is that it's supposed to be very quick to pick up. You can show up at your friend's house for game night and say, I don't know, what do you guys want to play? Like a board game? Do you want to watch a movie? And it's like, well, we can play some Electric Bastionland. And that's it. As long as you have enough dice to roll, which with electronic dice rollers at this point is like moot. But
yeah, you have more.
Even if you don't carry dice around in your purse, like some people, which is me, if you're not on that whatever level of preparedness for TTRPG at any time, you can still pick up and play Electric Bastionland with incredible immediacy, and that's sort of the whole point of it. And so I thought it would be cool to kind of exemplify that by guiding Willow through making a character.
Yes, I'm so excited
right now. So you have your dice out?
Yes, I have all of my dice out.
Okay, so characters in Electric Bastionland have 3 ability scores, 3 stats. Strength, which sort of encompasses your power, your toughness. Dexterity, which encompasses quickness and precision. And then charisma, which is charm and confidence. You only get a d6 worth of hit protection, which is HP, representing your ability to avoid being hit. And then as you go through shit, like as you see some things and have experiences, you gain more HP over time. So basically you start at level 1, little squishy baby who's seen some varying amount of action in their life and in their career, and is either hardy or squishy, depending upon that.
A 1-to-6 ratio.
Yeah, that's a lot. It can be rough. There is also straight up on the first page where it talks about character creation. The the next column over has a section on replacement characters. So
I have it up on my screen right now, and I just looked over and saw that. Yeah, I mean, sometimes your character dies. It happens.
It does. Yeah, it does. And in Electric Bastionland, none of our characters died, luckily. But my poor little roof gremlin Flare, she was very close. She had one series of mishaps with a mechanical spider that she was trying to wrangle and ride it. I'm gonna be real with you. Because they scaled this giant wall, and so of course she, being obsessed with being as vertical as possible, was like, I'm gonna get on one of those and it's gonna take me all the way to the top of this giant wall. It ended up fine, but it almost did not. I was consulting the replacement character rules and thinking, oh no. Yeah, so are you ready?
Yes, I am. I am very excited. Again, I've read through a little bit of this, so I do know kind of the steps that we will be going through, and I might just ask some questions while we're going through this, just to clarify things, and even like how it works in the game itself when you play. But I'm very excited.
Me too. Okay. All right. When you're ready, please roll 3d6 3 times, because you need your strength, dexterity, charisma. You'll roll them in that order.
All right. I have a 6 strength, apparently.
Oh no.
A 16 dex.
Wow. Okay.
I know where my priorities lie. And an 11 charisma.
Okay, 6, 16, 11. Go ahead and roll 1d6. That'll be your HP.
Yeah, so the one thing, especially if you've played D&D before where you roll stats for your character, this is very similar. You're rolling 3d6s, and you're just taking the number and going in order from strength to charisma. And then we're going on to like the... I can't remember what it's called again. The hit protection. All right. And that is just 1d6, which that is a 6.
Ooh, okay. Not very strong, but tough.
Yeah,
that's all right. It works out that way.
Priorities. I'm dexterous and tough, but I mean, I will lose that arm wrestling. So.
I mean, survivability ultimately, I think, lies in dexterity and toughness, so it's fine. And then one more d6 for your wealth. This is to determine the number of new pounds that the character has just in loose change and pocket money.
And that is a 2.
Okay, all right. You're probably not going to be able to buy a very good sandwich with that, but
I mean,
something.
It's fine. I'll take.
You can get a weird grilled cheese.
With some real funky non-melty cheese. Yeah.
Questionable. Okay. Let me do this. No, thank you, Google Docs. Okay.
And pretty much, at least so far, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that's pretty much like all you have to do to really set up the character. Is rolling this and then you roll for a failed career, correct?
Correct. You actually use your stats to pick your failed career. There's a table that's available, and it is part of the source book, obviously. I also want to add that Chris McDowell did a video showing some actual play of Electric Bastionland on his YouTube channel. It's a session with him and I think two or three of his friends or peers. It's very fun to watch. They have some audio difficulties in the beginning, but they do sort that out shortly after. So you can see this in actual play on his YouTube channel. And of course, he's the author / designer, so he knows it better than anybody.
Yeah, I actually might look into that. That sounds really awesome. Because again, it's very curious about this game.
Yeah, it is really wacky and cool. So for this chart, you need your lowest ability score, which I believe was 6, and your highest, which was 16, right? Okay, so you do your lowest across, so 6 down and then 6 across and then 16 down. So you got a 68. Mm-hmm. So now we go to page 68, or not page 68, but number 68.
Be wild if like the first 100 pages or so of the book were just the failed careers.
It is.
It is like at the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. As you sort of scroll through, oh no, what did I say? 68?
Yes, 68.
Small town refugee.
Ooh.
Your deep country was awful. Finally, the railway came and you headed to Bastion. They give some sample names, so you can choose. They are not indicated with any gendered association. It's just got a little list of usually 4 or 5 options. If you're the youngest player in the group, then the whole group is 10,000 new pound in debt to Lucky Mascots Limited. You have shared ownership of a well-groomed but stupid donkey, which has 1 HP. No refunds. So you and your party
I would start over a donkey.
You're in debt over your well-groomed and stupid donkey that you cannot have a refund for. And so then there's, of course, it gives you your starting equipment, which typically it has a weapon. Not every failed career will yield you something that you could use as a weapon. But occasionally that's part of one of the tables that you roll on for your background or your failed career. And so each failed career has unique tables associated where you roll, again, 2 more d6. The first one says, the first one actually functions on your wealth. So you had 2 pound. What was so bad about your town? Horse addict. They only ate horse, but now you can't live without it. If you go a day without drinking horse milk or eating horse meat, you are deprived, which is a status effect. And so
God, my
a lot
not
of
a horse.
Yeah, I know. Man, things could get dark really quick for that donkey if it was anything else. I guess if it was a horse. And then your family heirloom based on your HP. You said you got 6 HP?
Yes.
Your family heirloom was a pumpkin carved into a very good likeness of a family member.
Interesting. Yeah.
So this is what you're working with when you roll up a character for Electric Bastionland. I actually found the one that I rolled for Flair. She was number 54, a roof crawler. There's a lot of important work that goes on atop the roofs of Bastion. Yours is the more shadowy sort, was her nature. And yeah, we were actually indebted to the old-time Bastionian printworks. So we had a voucher for 1,000 units of anything we wanted to have printed.
Ooh, that's actually really cool.
It was really good. We ended up using it actually. Have posters printed because the conductor will roll a rival at the start of the game. And this is an NPC that is meant to sort of oppose the party. So they get lackeys, maybe, depending on how the conductor rolls.
Yeah, and
for them.
Before we get into that, very quick, for the failed career and everything, that just to put it into perspective for other games, failed career is essentially your class. That is your not abilities. It just gives you things that you start the game with. So if I was playing this character in a game, I'd be starting off with a pretty stupid donkey. A need to survive off of like horse milk or like horse meat, and a pumpkin carved to look like a family member. And I think
hopefully well preserved.
Yeah, I would hope so. Though I could also imagine just having like a wrinkle, like it being a small pumpkin and it like wrinkled down and like putting it in like some glass jar or something, carrying it around. But this is like, that is what, like, that's it for character creation. Like, that is how we are that is how we are starting the game, with that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very good representation of how wacky this game can be, because I went into this not really looking too much into the careers, and I came out of it having knowledge of they're pretty fucked up.
they're goofy. Yeah, so that's honestly one of the things that I love about making characters in Electric Bastionland, is rolling the stats and then looking at the chart and seeing like, okay, what did I get? What am I starting with? Flare, my roof crawler, got padded shoes, and she was a gargoyle poacher. So she had a crowbar, and
so
she
cool. That sounds
she
badass.
lived destroying gargoyles. So canonically, she also wore a necklace out of like inert telephone wire, like inert like wiring from cabling, and gargoyle teeth that she had broken out. And she, I remember, was convinced that at least some of the gargoyles were actually sentient creatures posing as statue. So she literally, her livelihood was running around on rooftops smashing gargoyles. And one of the questions on the roof crawler is, why did you shun the streets? And contingent upon your HP, that's your reason for avoiding the down below. Like, you live on the rooftops, spend as much time up there as possible. And Flair's was actually that she was hiding from an arranged marriage.
Ooh.
And yeah, my friend who was the conductor for this game knew that I can't explain it. I love the Muppets. In Electric Bastionland, there are humans and there are what are called mockeries. And the mockeries are Muppet-like puppets that are sentient. And
right? Yeah.
Maybe it's because he was doing an atrocious, stupid voice for all of them, but I hated them immediately. I was like, I cannot stand. So naturally, Flair's arranged marriage was to a mockery puppet named Steve Michael Daniel, and Steve Michael Daniel was a lion puppet. And he also was the party's rival. He was acting against the party.
And that's a good way to like start a rival, is tying it into some like, of course you could tie it in with like the debt and everything, but you could also tie it in with like arranged marriage.
Yeah, it made it a lot more personal, especially because I hated the mockeries on principle, which is like, I think they're an excellent game mechanic, but like I wanted to, if I could, I would grab them and shake them. Which is like, also, I feel probably a symptom of like what a good game runner my friend Caleb, who was being our conductor, is. Like, he knows. He's been DMing 5e for me for 2.5 years now. I think he's the DM of one of my longest running campaigns. We started in March of 2021. I think I did bad math. It's been a year and a half. It's 2022 right now.
Yes.
I had it in my brain that it's 2023.
Not yet.
Sorry. For work, I have to work like a calendar year in advance. And so I sometimes get my brain stuck in the future in not good. Anyway, we've been playing his game for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half now. And so in that time, he's really learned like what each of us as players like love to encounter and hate and so on and so forth. And he absolutely, we ended up in a prison.
Naturally.
I actually think...
Sorry, in a game where like debt is a big mechanic.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the like starting sort of principles is like you begin in debtor's jail and then you go out to hunt for treasure.
Yes, because that's also part. Sorry for interrupting, but
oh, you're good.
That's another big thing. That's like kind of how you're getting out of debt is like through this treasure hunting, right? That's like part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and yeah, you don't have to start in a jail. I found it, but the basically the goal is that you are treasure hunters because you have a debt that you want to pay off. And so it's exactly that. The beginning of the game is that you get a tip on where to get some treasure. And of course it's not going to be enough of a payout to pay off your debt. It's kind of the nature of Electric Bastionland is you're playing this ragtag group of treasure hunters who are trying to pay off their collective debt. And I do want to note, every time a character dies, 1,000 new pound is added to your debt for administrative costs.
I thought that was hilarious.
Which I just think is really funny. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you don't want to just like say, okay, well, just gonna throw that character out, you know, you're like, yeah, just let him go, whatever. So
I'm curious, for when you play, did you play kind of a mini adventure in this, or did you play more of a one shot?
It was a sort of like a short arc, like brief. I don't actually remember how many sessions we ended up playing. It was only a couple, 3 maybe. Where we were racing against Steve Michael Daniel, who was acting against us in an effort to get some treasure that was rumored to exist down some of the tunnels under the wall that contains Bastion, the city.
I love that. Then I guess like kind of my question is because debt is a big mechanic. In the time that you played, how much of the debt were you able to pay off?
None.
Oh no.
None. No, we didn't succeed in getting any treasure. So
oh man, yeah. Then because that was something I was definitely wondering when reading through, because you know, how much, you know, how easy is it to do this? How like is this meant for shorter adventures? Like what, like exactly what's going on? And that I was very curious to know, like with how much you played. That's heartbreaking, but I guess that means you could definitely play a lot of this and get to paying off your debt, which is honestly scary to think about. Because I'm curious if there's anything in the book that talks about paying off the debt, or is that more referred to like end game things?
Yeah, I think that is like the ultimate goal, as I understand it, is like you want to go through a series of adventures that will net you enough treasure to be able to pay off your debt. And there are things that can happen to like add to your debt, which is a sort of way to like continue to keep the game going. So that I think is more up to the conductor how they want to run or play it. Like if they're ready to resolve the game, if they don't want to play a particularly like long campaign style thing of Electric Bastionland, they could give a group of treasure hunters a job that would significantly pay down their debt.
Yeah, absolutely. I
You know.
actually do like the freedom in that then of you can just, because obviously as the conductor, which for people who do not know, that is what the game master of Electric Bastionland is called. You can just kind of make any treasure and jobs you go make them go on worth anything. Like you can make it worth a very small amount to where they're working up to bigger treasure to pay off their debt. You could make it so that they pay it off in like one like treasure hunt, stuff like that, which is really, really interesting because a lot of, at least in a lot of games, it's very hard to kind of be able to set like accomplishments like that, I feel like. Like this, I feel like gives you a good bit of wiggle room and enough is out in the air to where you can just kind of, as you're playing, shift it to how you want it to how the game's going.
Yeah, and there's the conductor's guide is actually in the latter half of the book. Like this source book is one of those that is player's guide and conductor's guide in one,
which I love those.
And so like yeah, it's very good. And so it gives you some example treasure, and often you get more like guidelines as opposed to sort of concrete things. Like there's no table you can roll on for treasure. It is up to the conductor, sort of like in Monster of the Week when you get to, as the keeper, make the monster. There are no stat blocks or anything like that provided. There's no set treasure formula.
It's just guidelines
made. Exactly. And so the key principles of treasure, as listed in the preparing the game section, are that its value exceeds its usefulness. There's a reason it hasn't been claimed, and it doesn't need to be complex, but it can provoke thought. And then it gives you some examples of how to act on those three tenets, and things like that. Like I don't want to give away everything in Chris McDowell's book. Like definitely buy it. Actually, if only for the art. It's gorgeous.
Oh my god, I want it so bad. I want a physical version. So
I only have a digital copy, but I might put it on my Christmas list this year.
It's on my Christmas list.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Like you don't have to say everything, but I love, again, with reading, I've read quite a few RPG source books so far that are usually player DM combined. But one of my favorite things is when I'm reading them and it's very much, I love, and it sounds silly because it's just like, it's almost using more imagination. It's like, what's the point of the thing? But I don't know. But I just love when it's so open-ended and like, I love when they just put the structure enough there to where it's like, you can make something out of what little there is. Like, here's just three essentially like prompts for those treasures. 3 prompts to like make the treasure. And you can just make it from there and it can be something really cool. And that's where just a lot of imagination can come into it and a lot of ideas. And I just adore that so much. Just building, again, it's a lot of these books are like skeletons, and it's like, especially for Bastionland, it seems, it's a skeleton of this like base setting, which is like set in the Bastion, and then they just give you a whole bunch of, even like with buying things. I was looking through that with like buying weapons. They list a few things, and then they're like, if your players want something else, just like use these for reference. Like
here's the basic guideline.
Like if they want like a hand weapon, like a pistol, dagger, sword, or baton, like something around. If you could like equivalent something that they want to one of these things, here's just like what it would. Here's the basic thing of what it would be. And I love that even from there you can still like mess around with it, like make it more powerful or weaker depending. I don't know. I just love the creative aspects of a lot of these games that don't give a lot of structure, just because that means you have so much room to wiggle around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And additionally, the book also, like, even Bastion as a setting is a living thing. So I don't remember if we discussed this at the very beginning, but Bastionland, Electric Bastionland, is set in and around the city of Bastion. And I think I mentioned it's post-apocalyptic sci-fi fantasy. And effectively, something happened. The sort of outlands are pretty isolated and choked. And your failed career, small town refugee, sort of gave an idea. Like, people come from small towns, outlying areas, when they get connected to Bastion by their railway system. Typically they are considered refugees because they've been out and desperate for so long, and then they're brought into the city. And there is as much going on underground in Bastion, if not even more than above ground. But it says outright in the conductor's manual section of the book that this is as much your interpretation of Bastion as it is anybody else's, right? There's not a map. It is up to you. And it says it's based on like the city nearest to you, a city that you're familiar with, maybe. And it's like, if the players want to get to something, give them an option of 2 places that thing could be and put them in opposite directions. It doesn't matter if it makes sense, right? There's this sense that, at least the way my conductor made Bastion, his interpretation of it, there's this sense that it was this huge and sprawling, but also cluttered sort of
mess,
interwoven. Yeah, it was a nest of a city. Excuse me, above ground and below. The prison we were in was a hedge maze that had like cells. There was a sentient fax machine. There are aliens. Yeah. There are aliens. There are the mockeries. There are humans. And it's like everybody's in it together and chaotic. And you can go anywhere. You can go into the deep country is what it's called, the space outside of Bastion. And I believe the living stars, I think, are what they call the like region for space travel. If your party is interested in that, like, that is an option, right? And a lot of that I've only gotten to explore by reading the manual, and I would love to play more Electric Bastionland or Into the Odd. Sounds like it's a different but related setting, maybe.
Honestly, I'm in the same boat. I'm very intrigued, and I very much want to play because it seems like there's so much there, and because it is up to you, anything can happen. Like, there's so much to explore, anything can happen. You could play one Electric Bastionland game that's just in Bastion, and then another one that's what was it, like, into like the star? Like, what was the whole
the living stars.
Yeah.
And that's also the beauty of it, is like playing, it's technically the canon setting, right, in Bastion, but if you played it with 2 different groups, you would be playing in a completely different Bastion, which I think is really cool and exciting. The idea that that is so open and full of possibilities for the conductor too, because it's something that like I, as a DM, always strain against, is like, I don't fucking vibe with Forgotten Realms lore at all. And so
I'll just making up your own.
A lot of exactly. Yeah. So I like develop my homebrew setting and make everything up, and it's like to have I feel like this is a good sort of intermediary where you have the framework of Bastion, and all of the areas around it and sort of the different geography that you can use in this game, but it's not very well defined in a way that gives the keeper, or not the keeper, the conductor a ton. Yeah, I know, I know, Monster of the Week on the brain all the time. The conductor a ton of artistic and interpretive freedom. I find that really exciting.
I agree so much. And that is again with like just like it being a skeleton, being a structure, the best part is that the nitty-gritty details aren't there. And that's where you can just make things up on the spot. And I feel like Electric Bastionland is completely a game that would be so fun to just go in complete improv. No one knows
absolutely.
what's happening.
That's encouraged.
Yeah, because like it's like it's weird. No one knows what's going on. The Bastion's just like this like enigma of a place. Like there's just so much that you could come in with no idea and just like make things up as you go. And like just with like thinking of playing it like that, I want to play it so bad. Just with no thoughts on the brain. Just dive in.
Yeah, just run headfirst straight into it. And it's like, it's that thing where it is an incredibly narrative game, right? There is a bit of crunch to it with regard to like figuring out combat and things like that, but it's pretty high stakes combat, very similarly to Monster of the Week, where you have your hit protection, right? And then once you eat through that buffer of hit protection, you start cutting down your strength.
Yeah, which is why a 6 is not good in strength. Because I was reading through some of the combat parts, and Emily's completely right. As soon as the hit protection gets out, it starts wearing on your strength. And if your strength goes to 0, you die.
Yeah, that's when, and you have to make like strength saves to see if you get I think it's critically wounded.
I believe so, called. And there's like a whole table on like what could happen if you get critically wounded.
Yeah, but you can only crawl, like functionally you can only crawl and until you get helped by a party member and take a rest. So
I believe
that's kind of a like
the one good thing, like compared to at least D&D, where like, you know, short rest, long rest have like set times. In this, I believe it's just like a rest can be like 10 minutes, like just enough, like as long as you have like food, water, and like somewhere comfortable, like a rest isn't a very long bit of time, and that works so well narratively as well.
Exactly, because especially in a game that is so free form, mechanically speaking, because most of the mechanics that exist actually relate to combat, because I mean that's what you have to have rules like that for, right? Aside from that, you make strength checks, dexterity checks, or charisma checks depending upon what you want to achieve, but there are no skills.
Those are just
your
just
that's it. It's like right. So if Willow's like small town refugee character wanted to bust through a wall, I'd say, all right, give me a strength check.
Which the cool thing about like, the checks and stuff in this is it's similar to Call of Cthulhu's the only one that comes to mind just because I know it does it in that game. You have to roll below at or below your number. So if I have a 6 in strength and I'm making a strength check, I have to roll a 6 or lower to succeed.
Out of your 3d6.
Oh no, it's with the d20 actually.
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay. I knew there was a d20 somewhere. The dice in Electric Bastionland are a lot of d6s, and then you roll d20 for like attacks and checks and things like that. And then the damage on your weapons can be d4, d6, d8. I think the biggest one is a d10.
D12 actually.
Is it? Okay. I couldn't remember if this system was D12 erasure or not.
D12s are so... D12s not
underrated.
Yeah, exactly. They do not get the exposure they deserve because they're cool die, you know? Like, especially with, like, the new ones and stuff. And, like, they just, like... And a D12, I mean, like, besides from a D20, that's, like, pretty high number to roll from. It's just, like, it's sad.
Yeah.
But...
Agreed.
Yeah, so you roll a d20 and you have to get at or below your score to succeed or fail. Or at or below your score to succeed. If you roll higher than that, you fail, and that will cause issues, which can depend on what's going on. But with attacks, because this is also something I found very intriguing, I can't remember. I know there's ways to do it, but the weapons in the game, kind of similar to Powered by the Apocalypse games a little bit. They have tags, but they're very, like, it's not a lot. So I think the only big tag that there is like bulky, which just means like no heavy, and you can only like carry so many, and if you carry too much, you like die or something. I don't know, it was weird.
You get like very bogged down if you try to carry too much crap around.
But it's
which is hard for me as a hoarder of things. I just like picking things up and putting them in my little bag and carrying them around and not worrying about how heavy they are. Exactly.
But the weapons have a I think it's D4 to D12 range for their damage. And what you do, and I know there's ways to add extra dice onto this. I can't remember how it is, how you can get it, but you essentially roll. Let's say you're rolling 2 dice because you get a bonus from something. And I can't remember how you get the bonus, but I know that they are very easy to get. Let's say I have a weapon that does a D12 and I get a bonus for a D8. I roll both of those, and whichever one rolls higher is what damage is done. So I just rolled a D12 and a D8, and I got a 6 on the 8 and a 7 on the 12. So whatever I was trying to hit is going to take that 7. And I believe also similar with Monster of the Week rules, you get hit back immediately.
Yeah.
And then I think it's very similar on the conductor's end is rolling those dice and seeing what happens with damage, depending on the bonuses and attack that is happening to you. Which I found very interesting. And most things in the game, other than like weapons and like poisons and stuff like that, have hit points. So all I understand is anything is killable.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's very interesting. But I don't know, I just felt like the way that combat worked with like the weapons was very interesting. And I wish I could explain it in a little bit more detail, but I can't remember exactly how it goes. But it is very interesting.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like varies insanely by your like party composition, how your conductor runs it, and the vast sort of range of possibilities that you have. Everything that you could be or have or do is also reflected in how things can turn out with regard to like combat and even like skill challenge type encounters and things like that. Like it can get wacky and extremely variable
and extremely dangerous. But that is the beauty of a game that's so like you can do so much in it, is that like DM's just gonna throw anything at you and you're just gonna have to deal with it the best you can. It's again just a super fantastic game. There is one thing I would love to know, if you have a very fun story from the game of Electric Bastionland that you played that you would like to share.
Yeah. So we started in prison.
Naturally.
Naturally, as one may. And we had been actually corralled into prison because we got turned into I think the collections agency by Steve Michael Daniel, our rival. I know, the worst Steve Michael Daniel. And fucking lion Muppet looking ass. I drew a horrible picture of him. We were sort of tracking our like local map in an online whiteboard situation that we were all drawing on. And I'll have to see if I can find the absolutely disastrous picture I drew of Steve Michael Daniel on the online whiteboard during some downtime during the session. Yeah, it was bad. He's the worst. And so he naturally, because my character was avoiding her arranged marriage to him, he took an antagonistic stance toward her and her friends. And we ended up in jail. And the next cell over was the sentient fax machine and a 7.5 foot tall man who had a potted plant. He was in jail for having killed the plant. He was very upset about it, and he had promised to carry it with him so he would never forget his shame. So naturally, my character being a roof crawler looked immediately for the highest vantage point, and that was this very tall man. And so
your character just reminds me of a cat. Short, I'm sorry.
She's something for sure.
Love it so much.
So she naturally just hopped the very low hedge wall between her cell and theirs and climbed him and perched standing on his shoulders. And he just let her. And that was how we played the game, was because I managed to make some sort of charisma check high, or I guess low enough. I rolled under my charisma score to convince him to let me stand on his shoulders all the time, either stand or sit on his shoulders, so I could be the highest up in the room.
It's so good.
Yeah, my conductor was like, "Okay, what's this guy's name?" And I was like, What do you mean? Why are you asking me what his name is? And my conductor was like, "Tell me honestly that Flair, who just broke out of her cell for the sake of climbing without asking permission first onto this very tall man to use him to gain a better tableau of her surroundings, like, are you telling me that she would ask him and not tell him what his name was?" And it's like, okay, that's fair. His name is Pancake. So, yeah. So Pancake and his dead potted plant became an extension of Flair's character and her character sheet. I listed there's not a character sheet, at least that I have or have found for Electric Bastionland. So I just had a little I opened Procreate and I started a new canvas and I just made it my character sheet. I just started listing my stuff. Yeah. And so I have her stats listed. I rolled bomb stats for her. 14, 14, 13.
Well, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, definitely not. So then I kept rolling, unfortunately, very high, which is like never the case. I typically roll like higher than average, but I feel like I roll a lot of 12s on D20s. Like I roll consistently between 12 and 18. I rarely get natural 20s. And then I occasionally roll very, very badly. But like typically I roll in that like mediocre range where I'm like, okay, 14, 14, 13. I think I can roll pretty safely under that a lot of the time. I was only rolling above it. It was
heartbreaking.
so
Except
aggravating.
for
I was like,
when
are you
had
kidding
to
me?
gain the friendship of Pancake.
Which was arguably the most important
Absolutely,
moment.
it always is in any campaign. When you're making a new friend, that's when you roll high. Because those are the moments that are going to make people
Genuinely.
happy and that you're going to remember.
Absolutely. I've got Pancake on my character sheet. It says Big Man Pancake.
Man Pancake. Oh, man.
Big Man Pancake.
I love that so much. And I don't know. It's also interesting because obviously with a lot of games, rolling high is always good. Rolling low is always bad. I like how it kind of switches that up on you for just the save rolls. Everything else, if you roll high, it's probably going to be good because you're doing more damage. But like for the save rolls, roll low. And it's so funny because when I was reading through the rules, it's like a nat 1 is always a success and a nat 20 is always a failure. And I'm like, that's very switched up. I don't know, it just like makes, it's so funny.
Yeah. I love a roll under system. I think it's interesting and underutilized.
It is, honestly. It's a very interesting way to have your players roll. And I guess like maybe the only thing is like it would be hard to balance that, but like with a roll over system, it's the same way. You know, it's just like kind of switching the way that you're doing it. So you just have to account for that. But that would be I was actually yesterday I was playing I'm playing in a spooky one shot with my DM. We're doing like kind of a spooky D&D one shot, and it's like set more in a modern setting. And one of the mechanics they decided to add was a sanity mechanic, which was, I believe, your constitution, charisma, and intelligence. It might have been constitution, wisdom, intelligence. I think it's that one. All the big scores, so the big numbers added up, and that was your score. And we ended up rolling a few times for that, and I was the only one that failed as we had to roll under, and I was the one with the highest, actually, of a 44. I rolled like a 95.
Oh, no.
And, my sanity score went down by 10. It was very upsetting, and I'm frightened. And it was very fun to do that, though, because it's like I was so excited to like use a roll under mechanic, especially with knowing because it's semi-inspired by like Call of Cthulhu. I was so excited because I'm like, oh, maybe like this is kind of what it's kind of like playing Call of Cthulhu with the sanity thing and all of that. And then it went terrible. It went terribly wrong. I now feel like my bones aren't my own.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
gross.
what happens when I play with a DM who has listened to the Magnus Archives. So
Ooh, I've heard good things about it.
It's very good. Highly recommend it. But yeah, the roll under mechanic is fantastic. And before, when I did interrupt you before about this, and I want to apologize. But you were actually going to be you were going to talk about like the rival.
Oh yeah. So the rival, basically is just the conductor's sort of like manner of acting against the party in a sentient way, right? So the conductor gets to make the rival for the party, and for whatever reason, this rival either also wants the treasure or wants to prevent the party from getting the treasure. In the case of Steve Michael Daniel, he wanted I can't remember. I think it was because our conductor he kept outsourcing names to us like pancakes. And so I think he said, what's his name? And those of us who were playing said Steve, Michael, and Daniel. And in concert, and he was like, all right, Steve, Michael, Daniel.
Yes, I love it so much.
Yeah, it's excellent. So yeah, the rival is there to be a sort of pressure on the party, because that's, I think, a mechanic that's necessary when there's not a lot of sort of hard written rules that codify like the length of rests or the immediacy of time or things like that. Like Electric Bastionland doesn't have a lot of those. And so then it instates one in the form of the rival who is acting against the party in some capacity. So often the accounts that I've read of other people playing Electric Bastionland is there'll be a rival treasure hunter who is going after the same treasure that your party is looking to achieve, right? And so then they're doing their own search with their lackeys or their compatriots or whatever, and you and your party, your compatriots, cannot delay too long, or else they may get to the treasure before you.
You stay in debt and you get messed up and all that. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually I didn't necessarily even realize that like the rival would kind of be that push with time. But I love that now that you mentioned it, because I think that is a thing, at least I know I struggle with as a DM, kind of getting the push of time. Like, this is urgent, and like trying to convey that, having an actual like entity that they could encounter and actually see make these advancements is absolutely fantastic. Though another, and it's off topic from Electric Bastionland, but it reminds me of it. In Blades in the Dark, there's actually a mechanic called clocks, where you tick a clock to advance the time for actions that are happening, either behind the scenes or on projects, stuff like that. And
that sounds spooky. I'm not familiar with Blades in the Dark.
It's very interesting. It almost reminds me, it doesn't remind me too much of Bastionland, but I mean, you're like playing criminals in like this industrial like city, and there's like ghosts and stuff. It's really cool. But like the whole thing is that like you kind of go on these heists, you do like criminal activity, stuff like that. And in a environment like that, you know, there's a lot going on. So they have this mechanic of clocks where it's like, let's say there's a chase sequence, and they'll have a clock for the chaser and the one being chased, and they will have like rolls that happen during the chase, and depending on those rolls, it'll tick the clock so much, and whoever gets to the end is the one who wins. And actually, the Adventure Zone just started Steeplechase, which is their Blades in the Dark game, and
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they it's been used so far once with like kind of a enemy, almost kind of how, you know, with a rival like treasure hunter, it was someone else who was like doing this heist and had the clock come up to show that there was progress being made with this and that you had to get things done. And the one thing I love about it as well is that the clocks are supposed to be like public so that people can see them. And so that really can get someone going, where it's like you put a tick on the clock and it's like, oh, shoot, we need to get going because like things are happening and we need to catch up and make sure that we get the thing, we get the payout, we get the item, we do what we need to do. And that reminded me of the rival in that sense. And that's really fantastic that they kind of have that version of that in this game.
Yeah. And especially if your conductor makes them somebody that you really, really don't want besting you, that it's a great motivator, right? To say like, okay, we're going to do this. And it also puts the party in a sort of interesting state of momentum, I think, which is honestly what can be the issue, I think, with less regimented, less mechanically crunchy RPGs, is like if there's not some sort of impetus, some force pushing players forward, then it's easy for them to get lost, kind of like doing a fuck about in
exactly
in the town or whatever, you know, like, well, why wouldn't we just mess around and do whatever we want in this crazy, like, insane mess of a city? Like, why not just go to space? Why not go to the deep country? And it's like, but you have a debt to pay. And living costs money, like existing costs money. If you get hurt, you're going to have to go see a specialist and you're going to have to pay,
I'm
that
curious,
kind of thing.
if you don't mind me asking, I don't know obviously how much experience you have with this because your game was short.
Mhm.
So items cost money. Like you can buy you could I think there's one thing you can buy a ball. You can host a ball and it's extremely expensive. You can buy tools, you can buy animals, you could buy vehicles, stuff like that. Does that count as debt if you buy those things?
I think it's really up to the conductor how you want to operate that. You could begin another debt with another entity, right? You don't want to, but you could. So the way I understand it, because we didn't actually end up paying down our original debt at all, we didn't have money to buy things aside from whatever coin we had jingling around in our pockets. And we were pretty singularly fixated on combating Steve Michael Daniel. So it was not something that wasn't a sort of facet of play that we ever got to, but based on what I have read in the manual itself and seen sort of elsewhere in other spheres of conversation about it, you can either accrue more debt or you can pay less down on your debt and keep the money from your treasure.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, I was wondering if that was something you could do, because I would imagine there would be some way to get yourself money that isn't just a piece of treasure, because that's kind of hard to sell to some random person for a bicycle.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to do the exchange, and then of course let's say you find a treasure, you find a masterwork painting that's worth 2,000 new pound. Your debt is 10,000 new pound, but there's nothing that says that you have to attribute all of the money that you make treasure hunting toward your
and
debt.
I guess you could,
right? And that's kind of the
sorry, continue.
You're okay. That is the trade-off, right? Is you could have more success and an easier time treasure hunting if you, instead of just automatically paying down all your debt, you buy some better supplies, you buy weapons, anything else.
You find people that will buy these things so you can get money, and yeah, exactly. You can get a vehicle, because I especially the vehicles and stuff. It's you could get a warship. Obviously that's useful in the game in some way, but it's $500,000. And so I was curious how a individual would be getting that money, but that makes perfect sense where it's you just kind of keep it yourself. But as a conductor, I could even see let's say your people go on 3 treasure hunts and keep it all for themselves, finding ways to sell it off to people and keep it all for themselves. You might accumulate some more debt through through interest and stuff like that, which would be also a really fun way to do it. It is totally an option that you can do. Just it will make your adventuring much easier. You'll have a better time. You might survive better, but more money is going to get added to your debt as time goes on if you do it enough, and kind of even pushing this is as an outside force of this is something that needs to get done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that is kind of the challenge for the conductor, is making it feel a threat, because it is to a degree a threat.
It is, because
the party has to pay.
There's you could literally think of mafia bosses and stuff like that. People will do bad things to people who owe debts and stuff like that. So it is a very legitimate threat. And a very good way to kind of have an outside force pushing at that, because you could literally you could make up a rival and stuff and be they are coming after you. or like they're coming after you, or they're something with like going on a treasure hunt or whatever would be really interesting.
Yeah, and there's the idea that nowhere is really and truly safe in Bastion. So there is like it is wacky and like can be very lighthearted, but there is always kind of the knife's edge is never really out of sight, with the understanding that you are operating under threat of confinement at best. If you don't deliver on your debt, that's like a
like that's the easiest. That's the easiest off you can get. But there's actually part of that reminds me, because you were going to mention about like the rivals with lackeys, because that's actually a mechanic in the game. Is there are if you make a rival for your players, they can have like these lackeys that are essentially like of their people they can have do these things on their behalf.
Yeah. So you can, like, technically Pancake was a lackey.
Makes sense.
For the mechanical intents and purposes. He I think my conductor gave him 18 strength because he was huge. But yeah, so it's typically, I believe lackeys roll their stats on 2d6 instead of 3. And so you have your rival and their group of lackeys. Because the idea is always sort of like stacked in the sense that, you want to make an adversary that your party can contend with, right? You don't want to crush them, because it's not fun as fun as making characters in Electric Bastionland is, and as easy as it is, it's disheartening to constantly be losing characters, right? So, and often if there is combat, it will be like, at least in our experience, it was like fighting lackeys that were set to oppose us as we tried to find treasure, and sort of stymie us and get in our way in that fashion. And so if they had been as hardy as us, as capable as us, that's really tough. Like in any system, that's really tough. You always want the adversary to either have fewer hit points or worse odds, right, by reason of numbers or power or anything like that. So yeah, the lackeys are not just for rivals, but I think rivals most typically are the ones that use lackeys, right? Because every rival is going to have lackeys.
Though it does suggest for smaller groups, they can create some lackeys for the players.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, can also be a very interesting way to have almost like little familiars or something. Like I can imagine maybe like a little, what are the little Muppet guys called? One of the like little,
if they're friendly,
as like a little like a friend, or even like contacts and stuff like that. Like like hiring someone to like lead you somewhere could be a lackey in that sense. And like there's like a mechanical purpose, and they're like with you, and there's a way to actually like in the game make it a mechanic and make it like useful and like relevant. Because I actually played I played Tomb of Annihilation, and in that game you can get like guides to lead you through like the not the forest. I'm blanking on the word. What is it? I guess like the forest. Lead us through like the Chult and try and find the tomb. And it was really cool concept. You get like a guide, you get someone that's like coming with you that you can learn about. But when it came to combat and stuff, like the guides almost became completely useless, as like they were just like out of the way of combat. Like they wouldn't role play too much, and it's like, oh, I wish this was actually like something that was like, it's like built into this game, but like in a way that would be like
not in a
Yeah,
fun
like it could be
way.
more connected with the characters, and it could be more like, you know, useful as like your character using Pancake as like being like as tall as possible.
The high ground.
Exactly, like even fun ways of using a character like that, using like a lackey or a NPC or something, to where it's like I can have fun with it and it's useful for me, and even letting your players control them and like use them instead of having like the DM like make all the decisions for them as well is very interesting.
Yeah.
A good way to like expand a party that is
Yeah.
small.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did, like, we had 3 people and then two people consistently. So it was like, yeah, having Pancake even just to help with like saves and things like that was useful. We had Pancake and we made a mortal enemy of the sentient fax machine.
So what did I'm sorry. What did the fax machine go into prison for? Or was it out of the
murder?
Okay, gotcha. All right, understandable. Enough said.
I don't know what happened. Yeah. Yeah, the other player who was able to make it consistently was, I can't remember how, but his character was like a swordsman of some sort, and by complete coincidence that was perfect for the player. But he absolutely very deeply offended the fax machine somehow. I can't recall what happened, but we had a murderous fax machine on our list of enemies because there are sentient machines. Like that is one of the facets of Electric Bastionland. Like just for the record, that wasn't just my conductor. He would make sentient machines part of it if they weren't already, I'm sure. But
I mean, it's just what you got to do sometimes as someone running a game. I mean,
it's even better. Yeah. Honestly, like let there be machines everywhere and let them judge us vocally. And in some cases violently.
All I can imagine is if you played that for longer and like kind of got past the Steve Michael Daniel stuff and all of that, I can just imagine the sentient fax machine being like your next rival. Like,
oh, absolutely.
having to deal with that. Oh my lord, I love it. Oh, that would be so funny. Oh man. This game, like when you first told me about this game when we were talking about Monster of the Week, and I was like, yeah, I'm really hoping like run a game for it. And I don't exactly remember how it came to like you mentioning the Electric Bastionland, but like when you told me about it for the first time, I'm like, I don't even know. Like I don't even know like where you would start. Like that sounds ridiculous, and I need to play it now. I need to play it. And the thing is, this is definitely not the type of game for everyone. The people that would love it
for sure
would freaking love it, because this is just improv, messing around, having a good time, making mortal enemies with fax machines. Like
as one does.
It's just like the best like vibes, just like absolute chaos and amazingness, like is what I can think of the Bastion being. Chaos and amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what I as a person thrive on. So I had a great time. And I highly recommend it if you like rules light systems, if you want something that's easy and quick to pick up and play. If you are very like nimble-minded, I guess, if you're really good at thinking on your feet and want a narrative challenge, then I highly recommend conducting Electric Bastionland, because that's kind of the ultimate test of how well you can
Yeah.
wing it. Like, obviously you can prepare things, but my conductor wanted to run it as an improv exercise for himself, and he ended up coming up with a really great and fun experience for us that we were able to play through. But it is not, if you are the kind of person that needs to prepare everything really far
Probably
in
not
advance,
Electric Bastionland
it
for
is
you. Like, yeah.
yeah, definitely not the one for you. So, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but you will encounter some aspects of Electric Bastionland, I think, that you might find
Mhm.
stressful if you are the kind of person who likes having everything lined out and pathed and sort of like set. It's definitely possible, but to run it that way, I think, would be more work for you as the conductor than is intended by the nature of
because
Electric
it
Bastionland.
is too much structure, not enough, like not a lot of detail to work off of if you are planning so much.
Exactly. Yeah, it is the kind of thing where it is meant for you to be able to make everything up on the fly, and the sort of lawless nature of it supports that. But yeah, if you prefer to have a sort of like cradle of like set mechanics and things you can consult and look to as developed by the engineer of the game or the author of the game, developer of the game, sorry. Couldn't think of the word developer. Even though I'm pretty sure I used the word develop anyway.
It's fine,
Brain spirals. It's okay. If you are more comfortable having a sort of like explicitly outlined network of material to fall back on when you're DMing, which is like, that's how I am as a DM. I, as a player, have a great time just making shit up, flying by the seat of my pants, like coming up with absurd nonsense. Like, the friend who was the conductor for this game mentioned offhand once that he designs encounters that he knows I'm going to be playing with the environment in mind, because I'm that player that says, okay, what's on these tables?
Yes,
Can I pick it up and throw it? Can I eat it? Like,
I love
that
those
kind of
kinds
thing.
people,
Like,
yes.
that's me. Yeah, like it's fine if I like am playing someone that can like just hit stuff or just sling my spells or whatever, but if I can do something environmentally creative that really hinges on the resourcefulness of my character, because I like playing very crafty intelligent characters, like that's the type that I gravitate toward. Either that or the type of character that will impulsively grab something and drink it to see what happens. It's one or the other. Yeah, and either way, that means that my DM has to be able to answer the question, what's on that table? And that was like something that I never even considered about myself as a player. And there was a point in me telling you, but so like that for me as a player is where I feel like I really shine, in being able to like make things up on the spot and like fly by the seat of my pants. But when I DM, I need to have like, I have so much happening that I've got to have more explicit and clear guidelines, right? Because there is a lot more to manage, and it's in a different sense than when you're playing. Excuse me, I have the hiccups at always the worst times. I will survive, I hope. Live to hiccup another day. But yeah, so like I love Electric Bastionland. I don't think I could ever happily be a conductor for it, just because the sort of like free nature of it doesn't vibe with what I need to feel like I'm running a good game and have fun running a game. So if you're like me and you like having like tables that you can consult and rules for different like miscellaneous things and like recommendations for DCs for certain encounters, that's like, definitely try playing Electric Bastionland. I highly recommend it. But running it, I would caution you against unless you want to do a lot of preparation before.
Or you're just trying something new to just see if you would like trying that style.
If you want to get wild, if you want to challenge yourself, that's a really good way of looking at it. Like if you want to open yourself up to the challenge of running something that does not allow you to run the way that like Monster of the Week is supportive enough for me, and it's like rules and mechanics and things that I can prepare ahead of time versus my narrative freedom. That's like kind of the in between that I favor with Monster of the Week, where it's like just enough openness, but there's also
that structure
more in terms of like, in terms of especially character mechanics with the abilities and stuff like that. Electric Bastionland is just strength save, dex save, charisma save, and no associated skills. It's, that can be rough, and that
can be very unpredictable for like what a player could do.
Yes.
And honestly, that just comes completely down to play style. I think it would be, especially if you're someone who is very like you like planning and all of that, and you need the structure. I think if you would be comfortable with it, it would be a great challenge to try and run a game like this. But I think for a game like this, you should play with a group where the DM has a lot of fun with flying off, like just off the seat of their pants, like running like improv.
Huge fan of improv.
Like able to make things up on the spot, and players that are also super creative and fun. Because I think that is the exact thing this kind of game thrives on. And I think this is a great challenge for people who are more uncomfortable with those aspects of role-playing games, like where they're not as comfortable and like have a harder time doing that. If you want to try and challenge yourself, I think Electric Bastionland would be a like jump in the deep end, and like kind of everyone's figuring it out, and like just kind of, doing it, like see what happens. Because I think that's exactly what this game is like again, it's almost like a expansion sort of with like Into the Odd. Like it is, it can be anything you want. You can do so much. You can be anything, and you guys are just having fun being like freaking treasure hunters who might go to jail and have to pay off a debt, and like in this enigma of a city in like a post-apocalyptic setting. Like just do it. Just have fun with it. Don't just exactly wing it. Just like if it's something that you would enjoy, I would 100% recommend it, because that sounds incredibly enjoyable. And like as a DM, I think for me, I would love to play but also run this game. I think I would like to run it as I want to get a lot better at my improv and being able to answer what's on the table and stuff like that a lot easier than I do. And I would love to run a game for a player like you who would just be like, I'm gonna,
inconvenient because at worst.
That's where
unpredictable at best.
That's where fun for me would lie. And that's where play styles just come in. Like that would be really fun as a DM. I try and like set up environmental stuff in the games that I run in hopes that people will use it, because that's where things can just get super creative and interesting. And like, I want to be shocked as a DM. I want someone to tell me what they're going to do, and I have to sit for a second and think, how did that thought come into this person's head? Like, I crave it.
How did you do that? How did you use my horrible fungus pit to leverage an intimidation check against these people and convince them to do what you want them to do? Instead, I've done that. Yeah, it was like there's a horrible, nasty, like pit of living fungus that these cultists are worshipping, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna grab one of them by the collar and hold him over it, and then we're gonna talk.
We're just gonna go from there and see what happens.
Exactly.
Oh man, absolutely. That like thrive in the environment. Do it. Just just go for it, because that sounds super enjoyable. And again, it just comes down to play style. Like, I know that would be something I would enjoy, but people who are into more preparation and structure might have a harder time with it. But I still think it's a valid and interesting challenge to do for yourself, to at least try it one time, even if it's just a little bit of a one shot, being like, let's attempt. Let's see what this game's about.
Let's see what happens. You might, Willow, you might inspire me to step out of my comfort zone, which is not my strong suit. But yeah, maybe if I run Electric Bastionland, I'll let you know how it goes. If it's a complete disaster, we'll see.
I mean, if you're ever looking for people to run it for, I have myself and I have some siblings that are always down to play games.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Okay. Yay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. I think like that's honestly like kind of, again, it's a pretty, like, from reading it and talking about it, it's a pretty straightforward, easy like game to pick up. It's a lot of just like, you know, what happens when you play it. Just it's super interesting, super weird, and I think that's pretty much the base things. And I had a lot of fun talking about this. I was, again, very intrigued, like, to start this and see like experience from it. And now, like, coming to the end of it, I'm like, I want to run this game so bad, and inspiring you to hopefully run a game of it, because that would be super cool.
Yeah,
and like, I'm again just so intrigued. And now I think, like, I don't get Electric Bastionland, I'm gonna get Into the Odd, or like I'm gonna get one or the other or both at some point. But I'm so curious to actually go through the entire book, because again, I only went through the like free, like kind of quick start. So I've only got the base rules that I read through. And just being able to even read through like the conductor of advice and see what they do set up as for the setting and everything would be super interesting. But yeah, this game's insane and it looks incredibly fun. Thank you so much for telling me about it.
You're welcome. I'm really glad you're excited about it. That's thrilling for me too, to see somebody else that's into it, and hopefully we'll run it and have a great time.
Need to find a group that would enjoy it, because I know, like, again, with play styles, I know there's one person that would have a nightmare playing this game. And so it's like I need to find some people to run it for, but I so badly want to do it now. Like, it just looks super fun and super interesting with all of like just the fun mechanics. And I kind of want to run combat just to see, because again, one thing, especially with like playing D&D, and a lot of people don't like D&D combat, I'm always curious to try and run combat in other games just to see how they differ. So now that's like running through my head right now, and I've just a lot of ideas. But I think that's probably, unless there's anything else you would like to add, I think that's probably the end of this episode.
Yeah, I think so. I recommend again that you check out Chris McDowell's work. Obviously, Electric Bastionland is gorgeous. I need to look more into the Odd. And yeah, he has, with a small group, a playthrough of an actual session of Electric Bastionland if you want to see sort of how it all shakes out, from somebody with much more expertise than myself. Showing you how it goes and how it works, and how freeform and weird and fun it can be.
Goofy.
Highly encourage you. Yeah, give him a shout. Find him around online and support him.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I'm even gonna, like, after this, I think like tomorrow I have some free time before D&D. I might like actually watch it and see a playthrough of it, because again, so many questions of just like seeing a game run. So many questions, so many thoughts.
Yeah, and the best way to learn Electric Bastionland especially is to play it or to watch it play.
Just dive straight into the deep end.
Yeah.
But yes, this was fantastic. Thank you so much again for telling me about it and coming on and agreeing to like talk about it with me and just like engage in all my like questions and stuff. This was fantastic.
It's always a joy.
It really is. It makes me so happy. Like, we've only done like 2 recordings so far, but like they have been like my favorites, and it's like, oh, this is so much fun.
I need to find more TTRPGs to play so then I could just come back and talk to you about them.
I think
I'm about to start a solo journaling.
Oh yes,
TTRPG.
Here in the episode, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
But yeah. Again, thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk about that solo TTRPG after this, but yes, thank you, thank you so much. I hope whoever is listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm so excited to record another episode with another guest, and hopefully Emily again in the future. But yes, thank you so much for listening, and thank you again, Emily, for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the RPG Goblin. Electric Bastionland is such an amazing game, and I really do hope that you check it out, especially if it piques your interest. Emily's social media handle is in the description below, along with the RPG Goblin social media handles as well. Next episode will be coming out February 10th, which is crazy, and we are going to be talking about Wanderhome, which is a slightly different RPG than we have covered so far, so I'm super excited about that. Until then, make sure to listen to any previous episodes that you haven't yet. So yeah, see you next time.